And lo and behold, in the outside lane, going from left to right, there was a vehicle that not only didn't see me, didn't see the red light, and got up to the intersection, smacked on the brakes, and literally slid in front of me all the way across the intersection.
Stay tuned. Coming up, it's part one of my two-part interview with Fire Chief Jim Arie as he shares situational awareness lessons from multiple near-miss events, including one where he and his wife were held up at gunpoint. But first, let's hear from our amazing sponsor, Midwest Fire.
Midwest Fire, a factory direct manufacturer. That means no middleman. You work directly with the good folks right at their factory in Laverne, Minnesota. If you want to see just how easy it is to design your own Midwest Fire truck, check out the Create a Spec tool on their website. To get started, go to MidwestFire.com and click on the Create a Spec tab at the top of the homepage.
Hello and welcome to the Situational Awareness Matters Show, episode 331. I'm your host, Rich Gassaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence, time-compressed environments with changing conditions. The SA Matters mission is simple. We want to help you see the bad things coming in time to prevent bad outcomes. Today's feature segment is sponsored by our new online training platform, Gassaway Virtual Training.
Rich Gassaway served as a first responder for 33 years. Now he's an online university professor, researcher, podcaster, blogger, author, and professional speaker. Rich is widely considered to be a trusted authority to help work teams improve situational awareness and high-risk decision-making outcomes. He has delivered over 2,500 live presentations worldwide and has helped more than 90,000 workers improve safety. Rich has authored 6 safety books, and his teachings have been featured and referenced in numerous books, research projects, journal articles, and podcast episodes. He has been presenting dynamic in-person training programs since 1992. And he has hosted virtual training courses since 2014. Some of Rich's most popular programs for first responders include How Smart First Responders Use Situational Awareness to Improve Safety, Firefighter Safety, Mistakes and Best Practices, and The Leader's Toolbox, Best Practices for Officer Success. His virtual learning platform makes it convenient to train your entire team at work, at home, or wherever they may be.
We now have 33 online training programs for your members. Some of those programs are live events presented virtually, and some of them are pre-recorded programs. To learn more, visit samatters.com website and click on the Virtual Training tab. Okay, let's jump into our feature segment, part one of my two-part interview with Fire Chief Jim Arie as he shares situational awareness lessons from multiple near-miss events, including one where he and his wife were held up at gunpoint. Hey everyone, welcome. I have with me today Jim Arie, the retired fire chief from Barrington, Illinois. Jim spent 43 years serving as a first responder, and he's here today to talk about one specific incident that happened. Actually, Jim, was that after you retired?
Yes, it was.
Okay. So, and you just retired in March, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So this was a very, very recent incident that Jim had reached out to me and told me about being held up at gunpoint and how some of the situational awareness lessons that he had learned in a class that he had attended kind of come flooding back in, although in the moment, and how he'll be talking about things like how time stood still and how he saw certain clues and indicators that maybe something wasn't exactly right, but kind of I'll let him tell the story. But we're going to start out with having you take us back to the beginning, to the start of this illustrious 43-year career. How old were you, and how did you get into the fire service?
Well, it goes back even further than when I started. When I was in 8th grade, I remember a shop teacher going around the room one day and saying, tell us all what you want to be when you grow up. And of course, most kids in 8th grade don't have any idea. And I said, I want to be a firefighter. And they laughed. And he later told me I was the only one that knew what I wanted to do, and ended up doing it. While I was growing up, my best friend's dad was a fire lieutenant in Urbana. And I remember many times visiting him at the station and listening to stories and seeing the fun that they had and all the good things that they're able to do to help people out. And yeah, it came together, and I was fortunate. When I was 21, I got attested and got hired in Urbana, where I graduated from high school and grew up. And yeah, it was pretty neat to see it all come together.
Now, when you started, was that a career position starting out, or was it a volunteer position?
No, it was a career position, full-time department, full-time benefits, union department, pension, the whole thing.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about that community as far as the number of stations and the size of the community and such.
So Urbana butts up against Champaign, the Twin Cities, and they are the home of the University of Illinois in Central Illinois. Champaign population at that time, counting students, of about 65,000, and Urbana, with some of the U of I and some of the students, was about 35,000. Urbana had 3 stations, one to the south, one main station, one to the north, and responded into some commercial areas, some industrial areas, a lot of residential, and then of course downtown, an older downtown area, and then of course the campus community, some of the university buildings, a lot of the student housing as well.
Okay. And how long did you spend in Urbana?
So when I started in Urbana in December of 1976, 21 years old, and at that time, because of staffing, they threw me on shift, and I didn't know a fire truck from a fire hydrant, literally. And fortunately, I had a gentleman that was on my shift who was a field staff instructor for the Illinois Fire Service Institute on his days off. So he had a teaching background and new training. And fortunately, he took me under wing. My training was OJT. They put me in the right jump seat, and there was nobody in the left one. It was me, and on the main pumper out of the main station. And so fortunately, he took me under wing, and we spent a significant amount of time just, here's the gear, here's what it's for, here's how it helps you, here's how you have to wear it so that it helps you properly, and then putting the gear on. Same thing with the air pack. Those were steel cylinder 30-minute Scots back in those days, and got me used to putting it on and donning and doffing and donning and doffing and breathing off the tank, and then blind drills throughout the station, following a hose, getting acclimated. I remember drills where we'd go through the bunk room and literally under the rigs and everything else, and just getting comfortable with that. And I started in December. I didn't go to the fire academy until May. So I had to have some sense of how to keep from being a liability to everybody, and how to take care of myself if in fact we did have a situation. And I was blessed that Gerald was his name. I'm blessed that he was able and willing to help me out and prepare me at that early stage for a career.
Talk about how important it is to have that early mentor relationship with somebody who's willing to take the extra effort to get you up to speed, and what that meant for you.
Well, it kept me from just being clueless and being a total risk to everybody else, and it gave me some confidence, some knowledge, some insight, some understanding of what I should be doing and what my limitations as a new firefighter were. as well as the limitations of the gear and the air pack and the time frames that come with that, and working exertion and how much quicker I would use the air in the tank and all of those things. It was just immense in terms of what it provided me at that early stage. And then when I went to the academy in May, I was dialed in from day one, and I was so far ahead of everybody because of the kindness of one person to help me out and get me off on the right foot.
No, do you remember, was your first structure fire where you went interior before you had a chance to go to the academy?
Yeah, there was a call that we had. I was on shift. It was a Saturday night, and it was in winter time, I think January or February, and it was a call for a structure fire. And we pull up, and it's a large, old, ordinary construction, 2-story house that had been renovated to be a antique shop, packed with antiques and what some might call clutter. And it had smoke blowing out of every place in the building. And as the firefighter on that engine, as it turned out, the hydrant was right in front. I helped make the connection for the pumper, came around the rig, and a lieutenant from another station had arrived. He grabbed me and said, "Come with me, bring a line." So at that time, they were 1.5-inch hose lines, drug a charge line up an outside staircase to the second floor. And it was nighttime, and it was charged smoke, a lot of very thick smoke. So we packed up before we went in, masked up, and drug the charge line inside. Went about maybe 35 feet into the building, a large floor plan, and we were crawling in, and couldn't see anything. And he was with me, and it was my first fire, and he knew it was my first fire, and he says, "Stay here. I'll be back." And I heard him work his way across the room and off to the other side. And so I waited there, and then I didn't hear anything anymore. And so I'm down on the floor. I'm down on the ground. I know to stay low. And I'm on a hardwood floor. And all of a sudden, it starts feeling very warm underneath me. And then it starts feeling very hot underneath me. And then the hardwood floor starts to get slippery because of the heat on the hardwood floor. And that started to be a stress. I yell for this guy, no answer. I yell for him again, no answer. Trying to figure out what to do. I know that if I've got a hose line, I've got an exit plan. I knew that much from my early training. So I'm waiting. I'm hoping he's going to come back. And then my bell goes off. And so my heart rate triples at that point, of course. And so now I'm not far from a little panic. I'm yelling for this guy. I'm yelling his name. I'm yelling. I'm listening, nothing. So I'm kind of gauging my air, and I know I don't have much air left, and I can't hear him. I don't hear anything. So I made the decision that I know that if I follow this hose line, I'm going to get back outside. So I did, and I followed the hose line and got back outside, came down, took my mask off, came down the steps, and there was a lieutenant sitting on the bumper of the pumper in front of the building.
That lieutenant?
Yes, sir. That lieutenant. He had found another way on the other side, down and out, and left me up there. As a new firefighter, it was very confusing and frustrating. And not that night, but later on, I was pretty unhappy about it. A lot of things could have happened to me, most all of them bad. And thank God I had some training under my belt to get me out of a situation that he left me in. So yeah, it was unfortunate, but it gave me reason to really focus on my training and my abilities and my confidence and my toolbox, so that hopefully I could keep from putting myself in that kind of a spot of having to totally rely on somebody else in the future. And kind of set the stage for me. I ended up being an instructor for many, many years, taught at the fire academy that I attended in May at the Fire Service Institute, taught hazmat classes, taught leadership classes, taught various classes for the Illinois Fire Service Institute from one end of the state to the other, and at regional conferences. Met a lot of good people and learned a lot from many other people. So yeah, I'm pretty fortunate that way.
Wow, that was that was a close call. It's kind of an unusual story in that I don't know that anyone's ever shared a story where somebody was left, other than if they were on the nozzle and the person behind them, it got too hot and the person behind them, bailed off the line and they didn't know that the person behind them had bailed off the line. But this is the first story where somebody, told you wait here and split from you and went somewhere else to do something else, search or whatever, and then just didn't come back. Because I'm sure you had to be thinking, is he okay?
Sure.
Should I leave? Should I stay? You're probably battling that thing on your conscience of, I shouldn't leave him. You probably were taught that, and then he left you.
I know, it was not the last thing I expected.
Oh, I could imagine. I could just imagine the look on your face when you come out to the street level and he was standing there.
Yeah, and I knew enough to know I was on probation. I knew enough to know. All I could think of was really. And I didn't ask him anything. He didn't say anything to me, which I also thought was kind of odd. And okay, learn from it and go forward. That's the only thing I could do at that point.
No, this wasn't the lieutenant who was your mentor, was it?
No, that was another firefighter.
Okay.
That was another firefighter who was a senior firefighter, was a driver.
Okay.
A totally different guy. And no, he would have never done that to me. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Did you have any conversation with him about this guy leaving you?
Yeah, he had some choice words, and he shook his head a lot, and he was just glad I was okay in spite of everything and the other guy.
Yeah, holy cow. Well, along the way, have you had other incidences of close calls or near misses that are memorable for you throughout your career?
Yeah, there are a number that come to mind. I was in Urbana. Again, Urbana, Champaign butted up against each other. And actually, there were 3 fire departments in the area at that time. There was also the University of Illinois Fire Department that took care of all the university buildings and student housing, as well as working with the adjacent departments. And Urbana had 3 stations and not a real active department. Champaign was across the street. Champaign had more stations, more people, more structure, more rank, more opportunities, and more fires, which in your early 20s is a big deal. Get a chance to apply your trade. And so anyway, I tested for Champaign and got hired there in October of 1979. And it was a great career, great people, lots of calls, lots of working calls. Lot of very interesting things and a lot of gratifying experiences and getting to work with great people. To this day, I tell young people don't know this. I told them that we'd sit around and laugh that people were paying us to have this much fun. And that's not something that a lot of people understand these days. It's sad that they don't, because the camaraderie, the cooperation, the living together literally for 24 hours at a time and then doing things off shift as well as a group was just so special, and so many good people that I still keep in touch with to this day. It was a wonderful experience and so many positive opportunities. But anyway, I've been on Champaign for a few years, and I was working out of their main station one night, and this was also a Saturday night Saturday shift. About 2 a.m, we get a call for a rollover accident, and I was driving the rescue squad out of the station that day. This was like a half-ton Ford chassis on the it was the cutaway box, the one that's got the angled sides. It's just a big toolbox inside and out. Mm-hmm. And there was room for 1 person in the back and 2 up front. And I was driving that day, and this is like 2 a.m. And we're going to the west side of Champaign on a call, and we're running, and we're going down a major east-west street, 2 lanes each direction, divided island, nobody out. And we're going to this call, and then we come up and I approach a major stoplight intersection that also has 4-lane traffic going north-south. And as I pull up to approach this, I looked to my left, nothing. I looked to my right, nothing. I looked to my left again, nothing, and proceeded through the intersection. And out of the corner of my eye on the right side, I see a car come. I see lights coming at a great distance, great speed from a distance. We had the green light. We had Opticom traffic preemption. I've got the light. He's got the red. I know that. He's not slowing down. He's not touching his brakes. I'm into the intersection already, and I have to make a very quick decision: go or no go. Do I hit the pedal, the brake? Do I hit the gas? Do I try to swerve? What do I do? And I decided to punch the gas and hit the pedal as quick as I could. The lieutenant in the right seat, he saw what was coming, and he had just time to say, "Oh, shh," and that was about it. And we got through the intersection somehow, some way. I remember looking in the right side mirror, and they missed our bumper by no less than 6 inches. And they were probably drunk driver, I don't know. But they never touched the brake. They never saw us. And if they'd have caught us, probably would have been bad for all of us. We got to that rollover accident. It was out in the field. Unfortunately, people were okay. I was useless. I sat off to the side and just shook like crazy because I knew what could have happened to us going to this. And yeah, we got through it. I wouldn't want to do that many times in a row and hope for the same outcome. But that night, yeah.
When you looked, I'm assuming he came from like the right. When you look right,
Yes. Yes.
When you looked right and you didn't see anything, was it that the car wasn't visible yet, or it was visible but you still didn't see it? What do you think was going on there?
He was doing a high rate of speed. I don't think he was in my view of vision yet.
Okay.
All of a sudden, he's on me. And he's coming into the intersection that I'm already in, and it's like, okay, we don't belong here, and hopefully we don't meet each other.
Well, he must have been traveling at quite the clip if he was outside the field of view, and then all of a sudden he's right on top of you. I'm surprised you didn't have another accident down the road after that.
Well, and the officer, I know he was looking both ways too, and he would have given me some guidance too if he'd have seen him. And all of a sudden, he's there, and it was pretty scary. And it was, yeah, we were fortunate that night. I don't know how else to put it.
I think most people's natural reaction, I don't know why I say this, but I think most people's natural reaction would be to hit the brakes.
Yeah. Well, it crossed my mind, and I'm glad it crossed my mind because I think if I had hit the brakes, they'd have nailed us. And, maybe none of us would have survived. I don't know. But it worked out. Like I say, I was useless at the end of the call, but I'm just glad we weren't creating our own.
Yeah. Did you and the lieutenant have any conversation after the incident about that, or was it just pretty just quiet?
He kind of shook his head. He said, "We made it."
Oh my.
Yeah, but I mean, there was no remedial training for me or nothing I should have done. He said, "We got through it," and just glad of the outcome.
Did the person in the back probably didn't even know what happened?
Not until later. Until later, and he was kind of glad that he got to miss all that.
Yeah, well, he'd have borne a big brunt of it. I don't know, but at that time on that vehicle in that era, would the person in the back end been seat belted?
Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah, we had it, and the reason I ask it is we had a vehicle like that where people rode in the back too, and there was a bench back there, and I don't even remember that there was seat belts, and if there was, I don't ever remember actually wearing a seat belt when I rode in the back on the bench. There were handles to hold on to to keep you from sliding up and down the bench, but other than that, there wasn't much to keep you from getting probably killed if you ever got broadsided.
Yeah, no doubt. And we had seat belts, but I don't even think we had airbags at that time. If we did, I don't know. If we'd have rolled the number of times, I don't know what difference that would have made. Just glad we didn't find out.
Yeah. Any others come to mind?
So I was at Champaign for almost 8 years, and during that time, I went and got my associate's, bachelor's, and master's degrees. And the city hospital was starting up a paramedic ambulance service, and I applied for it because it was a city hospital, and I had a master's degree, and I thought it might be a way to put that to good use, and was fortunate enough to get the job as the first director of a public paramedic ambulance service, and a lot of great experiences, and a lot of good things and good people. I've been there a few years, and one day during the week, they come in, interrupt me in a meeting, and they say, one of our ambulances just got struck by a train. And I said, what?
What?
and it is like, there are so many places that could take you. I was speechless.
Was this daytime? Was this daytime or night?
Daytime, middle of the morning.
Yeah, you're in a meeting. Yeah.
Middle of the morning. So,
okay. Snowy, winter, bad weather?
No, in the spring.
Okay.
And so I get my personal vehicle and I drive out there, and there are a set of tracks that parallel the highway south of Champaign, and they run freight and passenger trains on those both. And as I'm getting closer, I see a coal train. I figured, oh, okay, well, somehow they hit a small, slow coal train. And I get there closer, and it's not a coal train. It's the Amtrak sitting there. And I go to get out of my car, and spun around in a ditch facing down is one of our ambulances. And this is they were going to an accident out in the country where they were going to turn off this main state highway, turn left, go up over about an 8-foot high grade, a rail crossing with no lights, no cross arm that dropped, just the cross buck. And they were going to an accident out in the country on the other side of that. And the two paramedics were standing there, and I was very glad to see them. And I was talking to the driver, and he said, we're coming up to the intersection. It's wide open, both directions. He says, I looked left, I looked right, didn't see anything, and then crept out onto the tracks. And as he's creeping out onto the tracks, the guy in the right seat yells, train. The driver had the presence of mind to stop the vehicle, throw it in reverse, and start backing off the tracks. And at that point in time, before they cleared the tracks, they were struck by the 79-mile-an-hour northbound Amtrak train. That spun them around down into the ditch. We didn't realize how much of a close call that was until they pulled the ambulance out of the ditch. When they pulled it out, the point of impact literally sheared everything off forward of the windshield and the entire front of the ambulance. Fortunately, the entire driver and passenger compartment was still totally intact. Everything forward of that was sheared off by the impact of the train. And if that gentleman would have decided to try to beat the train, they'd have got nailed and probably would not have survived. And just by chance, happenstance, the grace of God, they were able to back off enough where it got the ambulance, but not them. Dr. Gasworth, that's not a close call. I don't know what is, sir.
Let me ask you, was this another scenario of the train not being viewable because of terrain or some obstruction when the driver looked in the direction of the train? Or was there a field of view that when the driver looked in the direction of the train, that even though it was, at 79 miles an hour back a ways, but could have or should have the driver seen that train even if from a distance?
As I recall, and granted this was decades ago, as I recall, there was some brush grown along the tracks distant from there that was conveniently gone before that day was over. So I think there may have been some field of view issues there that the train folks decided that it should be removed before anybody is able to raise that question.
It's interesting that I don't know how often the Amtrak train traverses those tracks, but I would maybe guess once a day anyhow.
Multiple times.
That there had not been another incident involving a civilian vehicle at that intersection, especially with the train doing 79 miles an hour with an obstructed view from vegetation.
Yes.
It's interesting. Yeah. By the end of the day, the field of view was perfectly clear.
I think that says a lot.
Yeah, that does say a lot. So what did those two medics have to say about the incident when you got there? I would guess they're pretty shook up.
Pretty shook up, and good guys, hard workers, both at a loss for words, and pretty humbled by the whole thing. And when they towed the ambulance back and everybody saw what happened, there were a lot of grateful people that those folks were still here that day.
Yeah, that's also a good call, like your call to put on the gas instead of the brake, and that driver's call to stop and put that vehicle into reverse was truly a life-saving decision in the moment. I mean, he probably didn't have much time to contemplate an A choice, B choice, C choice. He probably said, I need to clear these tracks as quick as I can. It's either going to be forward or backwards. And given how far over the tracks he was at that point, he made that instant decision that backwards would have been better than forwards.
Yeah.
Oh, and the outcome would have been probably tragic ending if he would have went forward.
No doubt. I'm fairly certain of that.
Holy cow. Lucky people. Yeah. So any other anything else? Those are two vehicle related, interestingly, because I don't have a lot of vehicle related near miss events like what you're describing. So I'm very intrigued by those specific ones because I haven't had very many of those ever shared along the way in my now almost 300, heading toward 350 episodes. So I'm sure they're happening, but I just haven't had very many guests that would talk about those kind of incidents.
Sure.
Anything else vehicle related come to mind?
Well, let me see. For the last 25 years of my career, I had an emergency vehicle of my own that I responded in. So I went to a lot of emergency calls.
Okay.
And what I learned long ago, and this is training, is that the public is not always watching for emergency vehicles. And that doesn't matter whether I'm the first coming through or the third or the fourth. As a matter of fact, the farther you get from the first, I think the less they look for you. So just been hyper vigilant about intersections. And as you all know, a lot of bad things happen at intersections. And there's plenty of reason to be cautious for that. So we had a call that I was responding to, and I was on a road that would end at a T intersection, three-way stoplight. And again, we had preemption. And I had the green light, and I come up to this intersection. And before I got to the intersection, I came to a full stop just to check all lanes of traffic. And I looked to the left, I looked to the right, and there were cars coming. So I was extra cautious about making sure I was going to see what they did. And lo and behold, in the outside lane, going from left to right, there was a vehicle that not only didn't see me, didn't see the red light, and got up to the intersection, smacked on the brakes, and literally slid in front of me all the way across the intersection before he came to a stop. And yeah, I'm pretty sure if I'd have pulled out, we'd have met in a less than desirable way. So it just reinforced the need to be cautious and be extra careful about those intersections because you have to count for all lanes and you have to count for all people and what they're doing or what they're going to do. And
I think there's an important lesson here because there's a lot of responders that think if they capture the traffic preemption and have the green light, then they're good to go without stopping and looking left and right. And one of the tricks, one of the ways that motorists can be tricked from that preemption equipment is if I'm driving down the road, I'm driving down the road and I'm looking up ahead, and as I see up ahead the light is red, But as I'm approaching the light turns green, then I know I've got 2 minutes of green light.
Sure.
But if you're coming from the other direction and you capture that with preemption, you'll turn that green light red in 30 seconds or less. And I'm fully in my mind expecting that light to stay green, because I travel that road a lot. I know that's a 2 or 3 minute green light. So it turns green. I know I got time, and I might not even be paying attention to that traffic light because I know I watched it turn green and I know how long it's going to stay green. And all of a sudden you capture it with preemption and bring it back to red. And I'm not even looking at the light because I know it's going to stay green for a while.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so there's a really valuable takeaway here that simply because you have preemption equipment doesn't mean that the motorists are going to always be watching the traffic light as it would change, especially if you're able to change it out of its normal cycle of green to red, that they might not be paying attention to the light and their eyes or minds might be on something else. And you think about it, once you see a green light, especially if you see a light change from red to green, you're not going to just continue to stare at the traffic light. You're going to be, looking around at other things and, whatever you do when you're driving, but it's not necessarily to be always trained on the traffic light and traffic light changing.
So when they had when preemption came out, I remember Chief Brunacini in Phoenix used to say, and when they had preemption, they had a rash of intersection accidents, even though they had the green light. And I remember him once saying that in Phoenix, if you have the green light, it just means there's power to the intersection, and don't take anything else for granted but that. And I think that still holds true as much today.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good. He was always good with those quick, quippy statements that were so full of truth, but were so compacted. Thank you to my guest, Fire Chief Jim Arie, for sharing your experiences with us today. Remember, this is part 1 of a 2-part interview, so be sure to check back next week for part 2. Since 2007, SA Matters instructors have helped more than 1,200 organizations and 87,000 individuals improve high-risk decision-making, including first responders, industrial workers, military personnel, business leaders, medical professionals, utility workers, highway workers, aviation workers, oil refinery operators, and more. If you or someone you care about works in a high-risk, high-consequence, decision-making environment, then we are here to help to improve their safety and survival and to help them accomplish the most important mission of all, and that is to go home to the ones who love them. Since the start of the pandemic, I've had some amazing opportunities to present programs on the virtual platform to groups ranging in size from 6 to 400. A few weeks ago, I had an opportunity to present to first responders from the Atlantic provinces of Canada. For those who aren't familiar with the region, that's New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland, and Labrador. Over 12,000 firefighters serve in the Atlantic provinces, and roughly 300 of them attended the live event, and the playback link will be shared with all 12,000. That's quite a value for the investment. Thank you to Shannon Murray and Vince McKenzie for helping to coordinate that program. If you're interested in seeing all of our events, past, virtual, postponed, and future, they're all listed on the SA Matters website. If you're interested in seeing a list of where we've been or where we're going, just head over to the website, click on the Program Dates tab, or under the Live Training tab at the top of the homepage. Program Dates under Live Training. And there you'll see them all. If you're interested in hosting a virtual program or a live program when the pandemic's over, just click the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage and I'll give you a call. Remember to check the show notes for how to subscribe to our newsletter and how to follow us on social media. There we're sharing ideas about how to improve situational awareness, how to make better decisions under stress, and how to improve the skills of critical thinking and resilient problem solving. Well, that's it. Episode 331 of the Situational Awareness Matters show is complete. Thank you again to my guest, Fire Chief Jim Arie. Remember that this is part 1 of a 2-part series, so check back next week for part 2. Thank you to our amazing platinum sponsor for 6 years now, Midwest Fire. Thank you to our feature segment sponsor, the Gasaway Virtual Training. And thank you to our associate sponsor, Chief Miller. And most importantly, thank you, the listeners and viewers of this show, for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters Show with Dr. Richard Gasaway. If you're interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit his website, samatters.com. If you're interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for a program, or if you would like to be a guest on his show, click the Contact Us tab at the top of the homepage.